Hey guys, it's Dice here. Welcome back. As you might be aware, um, I've recently started my project, Conscious Portuguese, where I combine language learning with holistic topics, positive psychology, sociology, spirituality, and it's a 24 module course with the option of individual coaching, but also I'll be recommending a lot of books that have to do with the topics that I've talked about, and the books are very important, so you can really get to some important conclusions yourself about the topics that I'll be mentioning in the course. But they can also be great tools for you to practice your Portuguese learning, as the books can be transformed into exercises. You can translate them to Portuguese. So I'm going to be talking about some of the books that will be mentioned in the course. There are 24 books that are recommended in the course, but I'm going to be talking about the first 5 ones so that you can understand a little bit more about the concepts that I've mentioned, and you can start to look the books up by yourself. But yeah, I'm just going to be talking about why I think those books are important. And even if you don't decide to take the course, I think those are books that can still help you broaden your perspective on topics that I think influence everybody. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so the first book that I'm going to be talking about today is called Healing Your Emotional Self. This is the book that is also included in the trial lesson. And the reason why I've picked this book first is because this is one of my favorite books, and it's also the book that I recommend to friends and loved ones. Whenever somebody's going through something difficult, I like to tell them that this book might help them see things from a different perspective. So, Healing Your Emotional Self. I think that, I'm not going to provide a summary in the first place. I'm just going to say why I think this book connects with all the topics that I'm talking about here. I think that Healing Your Emotional Self is a book that basically teaches you to accept your emotions. So if you're somebody that kind of tries to avoid your emotions, escape from your emotions, I think this book actually gets you to understand why maybe you shouldn't do that. But it's from a very compassionate and logical perspective. So I think this book was incredibly healing to me. And I think it just shows you like how much your emotional self might benefit from actually looking inwards and accepting your emotions. And I think that my course has a lot to do with emotions, your spirit, and a lot of the times people don't really know what those things even mean. So I think that this book can be a good introduction to that. So I think it can be a good starting point if you decide to explore those topics further with the intent of improving your emotional self, accepting your emotions, identifying your emotions, why you should do that. But also it's because it's a little bit of a domino effect, because I think I'm saying my opinion here. I think that a lot of the times, let's say so-called bad things happen in society, nobody really knows why. And I think a lot of the times those things happen because people don't really understand their emotions. So then they act from those emotions. And then a lot of chaos happens. But if you really explore our spiritual body, our emotional self, then I think a lot of things improve as a domino effect. So that's my take on the book. But of course, like once you read the book, you can get a better understanding of things yourself. And trust me, guys, everything is connected because, like I said, the course will have conversation prompts, writing prompts. And once you study the topics a little bit more deeply, then I think you can get to better conclusions yourself, right? Because you're kind of educating yourself. So yeah, this is a study process, So I think you can see this as doing research by yourself so that you can get to more satisfactory conclusions by yourself that you got to by yourself. You know what I mean? Without anybody else's interference. Okay. And then the next one that I really enjoyed reading is The Essential Jung, or Jung, as you say his name in German. So I thought that this book was incredibly helpful because I think Jung is really interesting. Again, like he's a particular academic, right? So you might resonate with him or not. And as I said, all the books here are optional. But me in particular, I feel like this book really helped me understand what the psyche even is, how the mind works, and that can really help you understand your own behaviors and everybody else's behavior. So I think that this book is a very good introduction guide to the world of Jung, because I think if you go straight into the literature that he wrote himself, it might be a little bit confusing to understand. So I think that this is comprehensive enough, but still accessible. And I think it's fascinating because you can see how the psyche is really, really old, and you can really understand why it operates the way it does. And I just think it's fascinating. Then we have Moving Beyond. And this book, I think, will really help you understand what I mean by spirit. But then again, this book, how can I say this? Like, you need to be open to it. Like, you might think it's necessary or not, but I think that it kind of helps to understand concepts through a more ironically skeptical perspective. So, for example, when people say spirit, what does that mean? Well, you might get your own conclusions. But to me, that means basically the part of you that feels, your emotional self. Like when I say, how are you today? Oh, I'm feeling angry. I would say the spirit is the part of you that feels angry. It's the part of you that feels. And I think that this book can really like broaden your perspective on things. And I think to me in particular, it helped me understand how spirituality and creativity are actually kind of connected. So that's why I decided to include this book here. Because if you want to continue exploring these topics, understand those topics more deeply, I think that the writer herself has a lot of content that has helped me incredibly. And I think this could be really good for you to truly absorb the concepts that this course is touching on. Then we have The Wise Heart. It's a book that talks about the philosophy of Buddhism. When I say philosophy, I mean it's really more of a philosophy. So even if you don't identify with the religion aspect of Buddhism, I think there are still very significant concepts and topics that I think a lot of people would benefit from considering. I have personally. I think that this book really helps you think about things from a more compassionate perspective. But you need to get to a certain level of understanding and knowledge to even understand the importance of compassion. Because I think a lot of the times we have all the reasons in the world to be like frustrated by something. But if you actually understand things or consider things from a different perspective, then you can get to conclusions that lead to less suffering. And when you suffer less, there's a domino effect, and then other people also suffer less. So I think this book has really helped me see things from a different perspective. It helped me get to the conclusion myself why compassion seems to be more beneficial, not only to me, but to everybody else. So yeah, this book is very long, but if you really sit with it and think about the topics, I think it's something that, like, it's a book that will really, really calm your spirit down, if that makes sense. So I don't know. I thought that this was a great book. And also it's more of an introduction guide because, like I said, if you get right, like straight into the literature that talks about Buddhism, it might be a little bit overwhelming. So I think this one is a great starting point. And even if you're not a Buddhist yourself, I think the philosophical concepts are still incredibly helpful. Then we have The Body Keeps the Score, because we're talking so much about emotions, about the psyche, about emotional development, that I think this book actually tells you that, like, for example, like your emotions are inside your body, right? So your spirit and your body, the emotional aspect and the logical aspect, they're not so different from one another. And I think this book really explains that. And I think, yeah, it's kind of like an introduction guide so that you can get deeper and deeper into the topics that I'm talking about here. And I think it's something that has validated a lot of things for me, because a lot of the times you might have overcome a situation intellectually, but your body might not necessarily agree and you don't even know what's going on. And I think this book helps you understand exactly what's going on. So there will be more books in the course itself. But I think that those books really help you understand what I'm talking about here, what the concepts are. And yeah, I think those books, they've helped me in a way that I think they were kind of fuel to my mind. So I kind of feel like, we are what we think. That's not all we are, but it's a significant part to what we are. And a lot of the times, a lot of the things that make us suffer, I feel like they happen because we have a certain lack of knowledge, which is understandable. So I think the solution to that is actually opening yourself up to the possibility of getting the knowledge. So I think that those books, they're a really comprehensive way of kind of connecting all the dots that I'm trying to make here together. And yeah, I think that those books have helped me a lot. And I believe in the power of conversation and in the power of thinking. So if you're willing and you would think about some of these topics, I think they would be incredibly helpful. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon.